And go.
And so I am Josephine Bush, and I have a lot of IT experience, and I wrote a book, Learn SQL Database Programming. Long ago, I just started in web development, moved to GIS, and now I'm a DBA. I work in a bunch of different industries like government contracts, environmental, financial, alternative energy. Now I'm in energy data analysis field. I have an MCSE and some master's degrees, and I blog at SQLkitty.com, and you can reach me on Twitter at Hello SQLkitty. Today, I'm going to talk about why and how you can use auditing and how auditing can benefit you. And there's a lot of problems you can solve with auditing. It's making your life easier. Also, you can centralize the data so it's easier to query and report on. And then I'm going to touch just a little bit on cloud auditing, just to give you a comparison to SQL Server auditing. So what is auditing? Right, in America, we think of the IRS and we just cringe because you think, oh, I'm going to be audited. And it did happen to me once, and the woman contacted me and she's like, hold on, don't stress, because we think we owe you money. And of course, I was worried about back taxes and penalties, but plus, of course, you have internal and external auditors. And I know external auditors can be scary with interview processes and answering their questions. So I can see why people might think auditing is bad, but I think it's actually a good thing. You want to know what's going on in there. You want to make sure people are following proper procedures. Maybe you don't have proper procedures. Then the auditing can help you figure out, what are people doing I don't want them doing. And today's presentation is specifically just about SQL Server and how you would audit in there, like perms or schema changes. And maybe your company doesn't think it's important to audit, or maybe your company's required, but you're not sure how to go about it. Even if you're not required, I think it shouldn't stop you from auditing. I set it up because I got tired of people saying something happened to the database, something changed, and everything is broken now. And now that I have it set up across all the production servers, I can see, I go and say, okay, nothing changed. And then they usually run off and look somewhere else. And I just did this on my own, right? Because it was just so frustrating not knowing what's going on. And actually, in the end, my company was acquired, and they actually want us to have actual auditing reports that we review on a weekly basis and have a ticket tied to it with a manager approval and the whole thing. So my boss was really pleased that I had done that in my quote unquote free time at the office, which I have barely any. But without auditing, you're in the dark. And it's going to help you see who changed something. And like I said, maybe that's what broke it, or maybe nothing changed and somebody comes to you hair on fire saying the database is broken, and you're, well, nothing changed. We had a SA, we had SA set up and everybody had the password, and we had to figure out who was using it. It's not like you go to people and say, hey, SA, you're using SA, stop that, or what are you doing? They don't really know. It's not like they're trying to be secretive. And we discovered they were just doing their regular job, but we had to get them off of that. And so we set up accounts for them. So it was really helpful for that. Anyway, auditing review just helps you know what's going on. I'm guessing there probably aren't a lot of questions so far, but I'll pause for a second in case. So auditing in SQL Server, there's a built-in functionality that's actually called SQL Server Audit. And you can do this in SSMS, and you can pretty much capture anything that changes on there. It's very flexible. It's pretty easy to set up. And like I said, I primarily use this for seeing any perms or schema changes. And like I said, you can set it up with SSMS. So you can either set it up in the GUI or you can use scripts to do that. And the first version that it was available in was 2008. And back then it was only enterprise. But by 2012, the server audit was available in all editions, and then database auditing was only in enterprise. And then in 2016 onwards, it's available in all editions. So that's a lot nicer than just enterprise. So to make the SQL Server auditing work, you need 2 or 3 things depending on what you want to audit. So you're required to create an audit specification because that's where the data for your audit is going to be stored. And then you need either one server audit and or one database audit, just depending on what you want to audit. And they're not dependent on each other. And the server audit's generally good for auditing the server level. I mean, imagine that's called server level. But anyway, you can do server level changes and then all the databases the same way at the same time. And then the database audit is good if you want to just audit one database. So you set up a server audit to do server stuff. And then, oh, I only want to audit this one database. Then you could do that with the database audit. So to create the audit specification, you go under security section, you just right click, and then you need to name it. I just tend to name it audit specification or underscore server name. You can create more than one, so you could always name it something more descriptive later, is kind of up to you. Queue delay, I should leave it 1,000. It's a wait time in milliseconds. I don't see any delay. I'm not sure between 0 and 1,000 that there'd be much difference. And then there's the on audit log failure. So there's 3 options here, which continue means if the audit can't capture the statement, it's going to keep going. And I always choose this because I don't want the server, the other options are too dire. So I'll explain those in a sec, but it might miss a statement here and there, but I doubt it. It's just the idea that it could is that idea of continue. And like I said, I don't want to fail operation. It's gonna, if it can't audit, it's just not, it's gonna fail. Like if somebody's trying to insert something and it can't audit, it's gonna say, nope, can't insert. And then shut down the server is just that. It's gonna shut down the server if it can't audit. And I think those are too drastic because somebody can come screaming to me that there's something wrong with the server. So we don't have those dire requirements. I've heard people say maybe if you have a legal server, like some archive of legal something or another, and yeah, it's so dire, you don't want anything happening on it that you don't audit, then I could see fail operation or shut down server. So then for the audit destination, you have a few choices. You have a file, and you have security log and application log. And I just write to file because it's easiest for me. I don't have a lot of restrictions. The auditors want to know what happened. They don't think that we're secretly deleting audit files or not writing what we said, reporting on what we happened on the server. And I could see application log if you have like a Splunk or log scraping that could pull all that stuff into a central repository. The same with security log. And the security log is a little bit more secure. So if you were worried about more tinkering and tampering with that, then that would be a better choice. But like I said, file is good for me. Just make sure you don't put on the C drive. We're going to limit the audit files. I'm going to go over that in a sec, but because don't ever leave max, everything. It's going to fill everything up. And but I don't usually put on data or log drives either. We have an E drive for applications where I work. So that's just a really good place. And like I said, I don't let it just collect max because they get so big, they're impossible to query and they fill up your drive potentially. So I just do 4 files of 50 megs each because I'm just getting perms and schema changes. It's not like there's a ton of those all the time. So then I just collect every 1 to 4 hours, depending on the server. And then I just pull it into the central database server. And then again, these are pretty small. So you could say reserve disk space, but I don't, but it is an option there for you. So once you create it, it's enabled by default. Just right click to enable, and no data collects if you don't enable it. In fact, I went crazy one time thinking, why is this not working? Because later I'll show you when you set up the server and database audit, but then I forgot to enable the audit specification. It's like, oops, nothing's going to collect there. So once you enable it, there's a file on disk, and this is where the data is going to live. Like if you chose file, right, that's where it's going to live in this file, and the file will grow to 50 megs, right? Because that's what I said, and then up to 4, again, because that's what I said, but whatever you said will be that. And then it deletes the oldest file, it creates another file. And so that's why it's important for you to know how fast are these filling up. And it's important, you don't want to collect a bunch of stuff you don't need, because then it's just filling up the files before you can actually get it in your repository or even query it. So before we get into creating server audit, there's just a few categories to go over here. There's 3 of them. There's the server, database, and audit level. And the server, again, gets everything at server level and capturing perms changes or creating databases and anything. Those are any ones that don't start with schema or database, and we'll go over that in a little bit more detail. But like server is good, like I said, for capturing things that happen to server or across all the databases. You could do, like with the server audit, you could do both of these in server audit. Server level and database level can be in a server audit as well. So it's kind of confusing, but as we go through examples, you'll see. Then you have database level actions you won't have at the server level, like DML kind of things, like if somebody's inserting to a table, that kind of stuff is a database level action. And then audit level actions are somebody's changing the audit, but some things are automatically captured, like if somebody turns on or off an audit, that just gets automatically captured no matter what. And these, this is like a very dense slide, but this is the server audit action groups. And so you'll see, like, they all start with server things. You can see, okay, somebody create, alter, drop something at the server level. So you can do all these kinds of things at the server. And then you have your database audit action groups, which start with database and capture things happening in the database. Again, like I said, you can use these at the server level too, if you want to get all the databases at the same way. And you have another slide of some more stuff that you can do at the database level with like schema changes and application role changes and such. So those are database. And then we have more database audit actions. These here are only in a database audit specification, though. You cannot get select statements at the server level or something like that. This only happens in the database. So this is only at the database audit. So these first of those 2 optional audits I mentioned, like this is the server audit. So same thing, you right click and then create a new one. And again, you name it. That's like really tiny, huh? It's hard to see that name, I guess. But I usually name it server audit specification or like underscore server name. Like, again, same thing, up to you. And then you have to associate it to the audit specifications. You set up, there's a drop down for audit there, and you have to associate, because that's where your data is going to live, right? So because you can't write to that unless you have that. So then you get, here's the audit action types I was mentioning before. So this here, all of these are what is going to get you the perms and schema changes at the server level and all the databases at the same way. So let's say you just wanted to get server changes, you just get all the database and schema ones out of there, and that just gets you server. And then, or vice versa, right? I mean, maybe you didn't want to audit the server, but you wanted to audit all the databases the same way. You could still do that here with the database and schema change audit actions. Again, once you set it up, it's not enabled by default, and then just right click it to do that. And like I said, there's the 2 optional components. This is now the second one, the database audit. And this one, you have to go into each database is set up under security. So you right click again in there, brings up a dialog box like the server audit. And this time I name it underscore database. I always name it more descriptively, because I'll show you in a little bit. You can query the SIS tables and see these things. And if they're all named database audit specification I did originally, then it's like, well, I don't have any clue what these go with, and it's impossible to tell. It's really difficult anyway. And so this is just, I would only use this if I hadn't done these actions at the server level, because I don't want to do at the server level all these things and then also database, because you're just going to get this twice. You get everything twice. So this would be like a one-off database. I don't want to audit all the databases. I just want to audit this one. So then you could set this up. And I think this is really where the database audit shines, is when you want to say, I want to see if somebody inserts to some table, or somebody inserts or updates to some schema or deletes from a database. And this is where you have to do a database audit, because this is the only place you can do it. And so there's a couple examples here. I'll go through all of them, but basically you have to fill out the audit action type. You have to pick an object class. There's 3 of them: object, schema, database. And then you have to fill out the schema if it's applicable, like with a table or view or something. It is here, it's not, because the object name is the actual object, there's no schema. And then you put the object name in here, and then you put the principal name. So public just means everybody. It doesn't mean somebody's logging as public. And then auditing, obviously this case would just be the auditing user. And if you want to do, say you wanted 3 different users, then you just add, you have to add 3 lines in this case. And this thing where I'd be very careful, my bold red here is because you can get pretty dicey and big and like unruly fast if you start auditing, delete or update on entire schema or database. I usually only do these last 2 kinds of things if I think, oh geez, I don't know, I don't think anybody's using this thing and we want to get rid of it. So I would say, okay, I'll go really, let's check and make sure, then I would do those. Otherwise the files can fill up really fast, or they just get so big you can't query them. So again, you have to right click to enable it. When you create these database audits, it's not enabled by default. So let's say you wanted to, I definitely want to know schema and perms changes for the auditors, but I also say, okay, well, I want to have another database audit for inserting, because I don't want to collect that centrally or whatever. So, but you can't add another server or database audit to the same specification. You can have one of each in a specification. So you're going to get an error if you try to add another one. But the good news is that you can have multiple audit specifications. So then you could have multiple server and database audits, because you can kind of custom it to like, well, I want to see schema and perms changes, and I just say audit schema perms with the specification, and then do a server audit for all that stuff. And then I could say, oh, I want to audit SA, and then I'll show you how to filter in a minute, because you can filter the specification. You don't get a bunch of junk in the background that's happening. And then just say, oh, I just want to see SA, and then I'm going to see anything SA does pretty much with a server audit. At least there is a way to see everything that happens in a database and schema. That's another bold red thing I'll tell you about. You can say, I'm gonna audit everyone changing a specific table, right? So then you have another specification with a different database audit. And this all will live in different files. And you can kind of keep it separate from each other. And it just, depends on your use cases, what you might need, and different things you want to centrally locate, or things you don't. Like sometimes a developer says, oh, I don't know who's writing to this table. We're trying to figure that out. I'll just create a one-off. And I don't want that going into my reporting for the auditors. This just shows you in relation. So you have your audit specification, and then your server audit, your database audit, just to show you where they live. Again, the database audit and server audit aren't dependent on each other, but they do both need that audit specification. So you can see what's happening in your audit via the GUI. You can just right click the audit specification, say view audit logs. It's going to pull up this, like, looks like when you look at the error log kind of thing, and it just shows you the 1,000 most recent events. Then there might not be anything listed, just depending on what actions you decided to audit. Or you might see a ton of stuff you didn't realize, because there's all this stuff going on in the background that you had no idea. It was just like all kinds of things with the server $sign and all kinds of stuff going on back there. So it just kind of depends. And then here, there's different columns. So in the audit file, depending on the version of SQL Server you're on, you're going to have some different column names, and each version tends to add some new stuff. So it's really helpful in 2017 when they added the client IP, so you can see where it's coming from. And then 2019 added application name and host name. And before that, in 2012 through 2016, it's a little bit harder, because you see somebody did something, but then you don't know like what computer, like what IP did they come from. It's a little harder. So I really like 2017, 2019 auditing a lot better. And I mentioned filtering before, so you can filter before a bunch of stuff gets written to disk that you didn't really want, or in your application log, whatever you chose to write it to. You can do this when you set it up. I just didn't want to confuse it at the beginning. There's a filter page inside the GUI, and you can filter on any column that's available. Those columns I just mentioned, that's what you can filter on. And like you could filter out your monitoring tool, say, or service accounts, some app account, is going to be doing a bunch of stuff. You're not worried that somebody's using it nefariously or something. And Because that stuff can fill up really fast. We actually have IDERA where I work. So that thing's constantly doing things that I don't want to see. So I just filter that out. And basically in here, you just put the name of the column and then what you want it or not want it equal to in there. And it's just like a where clause, basically, except you don't use the where at the top of it. That's pretty much the same thing as where clause. So, and you can delete an audit in the GUI. It's kind of nice because when you right click it, then you can check that little box that says disable, because you got to disable it before you can delete it. You can also disable it with a script. So that is there for you. The one thing to note is that when you delete it, the files stay there on disk, which kind of drove me crazy one time. So I thought, wait a second, what's all this stuff in here? Because I was like, wait, how is it capturing all that old stuff? And it's just because it leaves the files there. Maybe it thinks, well, you might need them later or something. So it just leaves them there. And you can go delete them out or whatever. So, but, and then one other thing to note is, say you deleted this audit specification and then you re-added it. It's not going to still be associated to your server and database audits you set up with it. So you have to like reassociate them. That happened to me because I thought, wait a second, because it's still named the same, but there's a GUID in the background that it associates with, and it gets complicated fast. So I wouldn't delete your audit specification and hope for the best, because it's probably not going to get reassociated. And then you go crazy thinking, why isn't my stuff auditing? Because it happened to me. So it's just all the stuff that happened to me that I'm saying. I seem to have lost my mouse cursor. Oh, there it is. Okay, my pointer. Okay, pointer back. Okay, so you can stop the audit by right-clicking on choosing disable. And you can do that with a script too. There's a little bit of different flavors there, depending on which audit you want to stop. And so the thing to note is it won't be able to stop if it's auditing actions. And that's another reason I mentioned don't audit too much, because you won't be able to easily query it because there's too much of it, or you lose it because the files roll over, but you won't be able to stop it because it's too busy trying to audit. And I have this horror story. I was so clever. I thought I was so clever. I tried to stop an audit on a busy production server and then it locked up and it wouldn't stop. And then all of a sudden queries wouldn't complete. Then I couldn't even get into SSMS. And I was like, oh boy, my boss came out. He's like, it's getting really quiet out here. I heard a lot of whispering as I was talking to my fellow DBAs. I was like, oh dang. And so we had to restart the service and cause a production outage. It was pretty short, so thankfully it wasn't that bad. But technically that should not happen. You should get a lock request timeout period exceeded error, because the audit's saying, wait, I'm busy, I'm auditing things over here, so go away. And I couldn't get it to crash in 2019. I tried, but I didn't try as hard as that server I had. That was pretty busy and I was auditing a lot. It should just do this error, even if it's a long running queries, because once the audit captures the query, because I ran some really long queries, but the audits captured the statement. So it's done. It doesn't care now. It's like, oh, I got that statement already, so that's fine. So in my case, I was running on SQL Server 2014, and it was a very busy production server. And I had to audit selects, which I don't recommend, but it was for PCI compliance. So I had to know when people were decrypting credit cards. So there was really no way around some of these were very active, like customer service people calling in from vendors, and so we just had to audit. But so once it's created, you can modify it. But you can't modify it while it's enabled, so you have to disable it. Again, you can do that with a GUI or a script, the modification, right? So the only thing you can't change is the name of it. You're going to have to delete it and recreate it to change the name. So just a quick summary saying that we need that one audit specification, because that's where our data lives, and then you need one of two things or both, the server and the database audit, so that you actually get things collecting and that you see things being audited. So I'll just pause for a sec and see if anybody has any questions. And I can have a drink.
So I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Where is this located in Azure?
Oh, Azure. Well, okay.
Yeah, that trivial environment.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that. Yeah, so I'll show you more about Azure SQL toward the end. But like managed instance, you can do it, but then you have to store it in like blob storage or something. But in Azure SQL, it works a little different. So I'll show you at the end. There's like cloud slides on this, and It's not as nice because it doesn't filter, like you can't filter, you get everything. That's not very nice, but it's pretty good. I've used it. I'll show you in a bit.
I have a question. Can you, you showed the filters, can you filter on specific like AD groups as opposed to just individual
Oh, yeah.
principles? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you can filter on that.
And can you audit system databases? Like master, MSDB?
Yeah, totally. I don't know. I like suddenly escaped me. Yes, I do in fact audit them. In fact, I have a couple slides specifically on auditing some of the internals of SSIS DB and like
Nice.
MSDB. Yeah, it's not as good as I'd like it to be, but it's better than nothing. But yeah, master, and I don't know if I audit model very much, but I definitely audit master.
And final question along the same lines, does it audit itself, meaning system-specific roles, internals?
It can. I mean, like if, for instance, SQL Server has like server $ stuff, it will capture all that stuff. I filter it out, but it can capture everything it's doing. Yeah.
Okay.
There's only one sketchy area where like when the server, like if a server bounces, you'll get in the audit that it stopped. If you stop it and change it and then you start it again, you won't get that auditing. Like say somebody's like, oh, I'm going to stop it. You'll see that it stopped. In fact, you might not even, well, I guess you'll see it stop because it automatically does that. But if you change it while it's stopped, then SQL Server is not capturing that change. So it's a little dicey there, I have to admit. But yeah, it's getting pretty much everything other than if you change it while it's stopped.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so I like the scripting out part because I can't stand all the boring right click, clicking, right click. It gets really tedious. I mean, sometimes I wind up in the drop down. It's like I got two of the same one audit action in there twice, and somehow it lets you save it like that, and then or I missed one, it's like a mess. So I started scripting it out because it's pretty straightforward once you understand how it works, and especially if you want to put on multiple servers, so you can just right click. So if you're not comfortable with this, with the syntax, you can always create one and then script it out from the GUI. And then this is the script of the audit specification. It's really in alignment with what you set up in the dialog box, the right you name it. You have a file path. I mean, this would be a little different. Here would be application log or security log. You wouldn't be setting any of this kind of stuff right here. You would instead have application log in there, say for instance. And in this case, then you can say right in there, I'm going to set it to on, because I don't have to forget to enable it and wonder where my data is, like, why is it not collecting? Then you don't have to have this. You don't have to enable it, but I just like to have it there because then I know it's ready to go. And similar, you know, server audit, very similar, like the dialog box. You got to name it, you got to associate it to your audit specification, and then here's all your different audit actions. So it's nice if you want to, you know, you say, oh boy, I don't know, I don't want all this stuff. It's easier than trying to go through the drop down and figure out, you know, it's just easier to see it all typed out there. I want to put a different one in, I'll take another one out. And like this is going to capture everything at the server level, and it's going to capture the database perms and schema changes for every database across the server, this one, and then it sets the state on. Again, you don't have to do that. You can say off, but it, you know, then you just have to enable it later. You might forget. And then here's our database audits, like, you know, same idea of the dialog box really follows that. Naming is associating to your audit, and then here's all your database changes. The only thing you can't really do at the server level is this DBCC group. I've caught developers running DBCC commands on databases, and I asked them, what's happening here? Just because out of curiosity, they're like, oh, what? how'd you catch that? So I don't always audit every database. I don't always catch that, but not that worried about DBCC. So anyway, again, you set it on, so it's ready to go. This I would not use unless I was just one-off database auditing, because I'm most likely doing all this stuff at the server level already. So I don't want that duplicate auditing. And then here we have this one where I say the database audit shines, is this inserting, update, deleting, executing on objects. Again, this is where I set up a separate audit file, audit specification, excuse me, with a separate file. Sometimes I put in like a subfolder, that way I know I'm not gonna get anything confused, and then I can create this database audit that gets associated to this. So it's all separate from my perms and schema changes. And like I said, these ones here with the schema and database changes, those can get big fast, even if it's just delete on one schema. Sometimes they're really busy, right? So just be careful with those. And here's filtering. So you, like I say, you can do that in the GUI too, where in there you don't use the where keyword, but here you do. It's just like a where clause. You have to have that where statement in there. And you know, the thing, like I said, you know, you want to see something, you don't want to see, obviously you said, I only want it to be SA. You don't need to say not equal to anything else, but that's a where clause. So you could say, oh, I only want to see this host name if you're in 2019, for instance, or I just want to see from like something like this statement or something, you know, there's all kinds of things you can do with the filtering, which is nice. So thankfully, you don't have to use the GUI, because I think the GUI is like, it's great to look if you just set up your audit and go, oh yeah, okay, ooh, I think it's auditing things now. Oh, that's good, okay. But I like the query. It's so much easier. It's very handy once you have it. You don't, unlike extended events where you have to parse through XML to read it, this is nice. There's a function, you just call the function to get your SQL audit file, and you just name the columns, and it's like really easy. And then I interjoin the audit as a sys table that has audit actions, so that sometimes you see stuff in the audit, you're like, wait, why am I getting that? I know a user is not running this, but it turns out it's view server state stuff happen in the background, right? So I just make sure, for sanity's sake, on our auditing report, why is this happening? And then this, it's in UTC time, it's stored in UTC time, so I just convert it to a local time zone. It's just so it makes it easier. And so, and here's where, if I was going to audit a user, and this is where you want to be really careful. So in this case, I'm saying I really want to audit auditing user, which I probably wouldn't, but in this case, I would use the SA here, like I did. And then, I don't know, I didn't want to see sys schema. Sometimes sys schema stuff will come through, or like I said, random other stuff. So I'm just showing you like the basics of how you could do this. So I'd say SA in this case. And then these actions here, these ones in bold red, database object access and schema object access, that is going to get everything that SA is doing. Like it's going to say select, insert, update, delete. It doesn't matter, everything, anything. It's going to be, you don't have to go set every table in a database audit to say, oh, did they select from this table? No. But I put this separate, and I didn't put it with the other stuff, because it's just like, be super careful with this stuff, because it's can get so big so fast, and I just try to avoid it unless I really have to do it. But it's nice to have, quite frankly, because I've used it. So here's where you can audit MSDB. Specifically, you can audit MSDB at the server level, so you can see if somebody changed something in there, like schema or perms or whatever. But this will actually allow you to see sort of nebulously what people are doing. It's not perfect by any means, but it's better than not knowing that somebody didn't update anything. And I mean, I see so-and-so updated this job. I don't see what they updated really. It's still a work in progress, but it's an option. And same with SSIS. I kind of just picked apart some of the things that change. And then ultimately, usually what I see is that they decrypted some key or something when they update SSIS packages, but at least it's something in the audit trail besides nothing, because we have developers that have SA to the SSIS server, so they can change jobs and change SSIS, because we didn't want to be involved in that because it turned into a mess. So it's just nice to know if something, at least anything changed. And then here's the SIS tables I was mentioning. You can get a listing of audit specifications, so you can see kind of how they're configured, max file sizes, max files, like is it enabled, what is it named? And then you can get the server audit specifications here. So that's kind of nice. And that's kind of why sometimes I run this against my registered server list, or maybe with PowerShell. And that's why I would say I would name it with _ server name, just so that I know if I'm getting back a big list, then I know what server audit that's associated with, but it's not the end of the world if you don't. And then here, like I said, this is where, when you get the list of database audit specifications, this is really where it's important, because it's very difficult to figure out what database audit specification it's associated with the database, because you can literally name them all exactly the same because they're each in a different database. But this gives you a list, you can see all your audit actions and stuff, so that's kind of nice. So my disclaimer, I love my bold red. Just be careful how you audit, because you can freeze up or overload a production server, just because I know what happened to me. I didn't think it was possible, actually. I don't think it's not supposed to be possible. But even still, if you're auditing so much, it's like trying to find a needle in a haystack. I mean, forget about it. You might as well not audit, because you got so much stuff in there. You're never going to find anything. So less is more, right? And I think this is a lot to take in. It's like a giant information overload, but I'm working on this script to automate the more basic setup. So let's say you just want to set up, I just want to set up permanent schema changes for server and databases or whatever. I'm working on a script for that, like a sort of procedure that people can use. So that's kind of a work in progress right now. So with the auditing, the scripts, obviously you can do everything in the GUI that you can do that with scripts as well. And then it's easier to create on multiple servers, and it's easier to filter with a query when you want to go and you want to collect it in a central location. It's a lot easier than using the GUI. So, okay, I was going to move on to the demo, but I want to stop for a sec to see if anybody had any questions about the script stuff. Okay, the silence I take is no. Oh.
Sorry, I got a quick question.
Oh yeah, okay.
Sorry. So I have some users. Is there a way to audit them just accessing a particular schema
Oh yeah.
versus, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, good, because I got
Yeah.
one guy who's running wild in this one schema and it's driving me crazy.
Yeah, I would think that it might be good to have like an audit specification for that, and then you create a server audit, and then you could say in the filter for the audit specification, I just want to get this one guy and this one schema, and then you could do those ones, the bold red ones I told you not to do, then you could do those because I know you're filtering, right? You're just doing that one guy and one schema. I mean, if he's really busy, I guess it's like, I don't know how busy he is, but yeah, it would totally work. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see here. My trusty demo. I was doing this on Linux SQL Server, and I got tired of that because I can't show you the folder structure as well. So now I tested this. Let's see if it all works, because it's always a bad thing when you change your demo day of. But so, okay, so here we are, and we want to set up our audit, right? So I'm going to do it manually first, so you can see kind of the process. So we'll say audit specification, and like I said, I don't put on C drive. So my VM has an E drive just for this purpose, just so you see I'm not putting it on C drive. I'm not breaking my own rules. So then I don't ever want to do max of anything. I could see a case, I guess, if you never wanted to read the file ever again and you just saved it in a file server somewhere, but I'm not really sure the point of that, maybe. But it is an option, I guess. So anyway, really quickly, we set up audit specification, continue file, in the E drive with 4 files of 50 megs each, and then we say okay, and then we see it over here, right? And we enable it because it won't collect anything without that. So then we need to do something else, because nothing happens now. That's just a file sitting on my E drive now, right? It's just there waiting. Nothing's going to happen. So we have to set up the server audit specification. And so I just named that. And then there's a drop down. So if you had multiple, but you got to associate to one of them at least. And this is where I always mess up my demo, because this is where it's good. This is why I love scripts, because here's the problem is that I want the server object change group in this case to show you something. Okay, so half the time I pick the schema object change group. I don't know why. So, okay, it's for really this, so that's why I love scripts, because then I know, okay, I'm not messing this up. So I'm gonna enable it, because again, it won't collect, right? So still, we just have our little file here waiting for us to do something, because nothing's gonna be in there right now. So actually, we can view it really quick. Something is in there. I guess I lied. I didn't really lie. It's just that we changed the audit session, right? So it's picked up that we did some change. And that's why I say it's sort of nebulous. It's not like really descriptive. It's just saying something changed, but you're not really going to know what. So we'll just minimize that for a sec. So we did set up the server audit, right? And it's saying server audit change group. But now I say, oh, well, I want to add a database, right? So let's refresh here so that it's for real, you know, it's there. And then let's go back to our GUI here. So you didn't capture that because we're not getting the thing that we need. So here you're going to see that I say alter the set it off, and then I'm going to add another action, and then I'm going to set it back on. So now I'm going to drop this and recreate it. And I'm not going to go back to the GUI because that, no, I can't stand using that thing. So then I'm going to show you really quickly. This is everything that's in the audit file. You have all these things, lots of things in here, things that I don't really think are that useful to me, but they could be useful to you. I kind of pared it down to what I thought was the most valuable. So you see, there's lots of columns. That slide I showed you was like a cross section of what I thought was useful. So here's what I actually used to see. Okay, so now we see, since I added that, I added this database change group. Now I see the drop and create. So it sort of builds on itself. And then I don't want to have to come back here every time. I think I put this in here, but so that you know I'm not smoke and mirrors. It's like really that query. So then I'm going to build on all this stuff. So then I'm going to create a login, right? So then we see that login over here. We got a testing login, but you're not going to see it in the audit because I'm not auditing. I'm only auditing for a couple things that doesn't include that. So now I need the server principal change group, and then I'm going to drop it. Every time I did this earlier at once, it screamed at me. Okay, I'm going to do a separate. Anyway, so then you'll see it now because we added that next action. And so we're just kind of building. So we say, oh, okay, well, now I want that testing user to have read write, but you're not going to see that in the audit now because we need to add some more stuff here. We need some more things to our server audit, which is actually doing server and all the databases the same way. So that's why we're using this database stuff now. So we can say, drop this user, recreate them, and then now we can see, okay, yeah, we got the create, we got the alters on the roles. And then I want to see, oh, let's see if I create a table, what happens now? Well, you're not going to see that because we also need to do the schema object change group in order to see that. So I'll just go ahead and drop it and recreate it so that you actually see it in the audit. So then you drop it, create it, because we've added, so it's kind of layers. So you can really get nuanced in what you want to see if you only want to see one specific thing. Now, I wouldn't do this on a database server. I don't like granting perms to an individual on a table, but I just want you to see how you would audit that. I usually use a group, and I don't know if I would do a single object or not. But anyway, I want you to see that if you did that, now you're not seeing that. Even though you're seeing this role changes in the database, you're not seeing the grants to specific objects. So now you need to do the schema object permission change group, right? So then we go ahead and we grant the alter again, and then we can see it in here. So now we see it because we added that next level of auditing, right? That's not a level, I guess, it's just another action. So then let's say, okay, I want to see somebody inserted to a table. I'm not going to see that here, right? Because I'm actually not able to get inserts at the server level audit. So what I would do in this case, because I don't want this stuff mishmashed in with my perms and schema changes that the auditors are going to see. So I generally say, I'm gonna add another audit specification. So it's going to be a second specification that's going to be just for the testing DB. And then I'm going to say, I'm going to add a database audit for this in this case. So it's going to live in your database, and there it is. And so it's just going to get insert on the testing table. Now you could do a whole bunch of stuff in here too, but you know, just for simplicity's sake, I'm just show you like that. So now this is all mishmashed in together, right? Did I put that in a subfolder? Probably not. No, but of course, that would make it easier. But here now, see, I'm saying star, so it's getting all the stuff in here, but you see how the files are named different. I have a testing folder for this purpose, but I didn't use it. I don't know why, to make it interesting. So now you have these separate files. So you could say, I mean, worst case, you could say, I just want to get, I know that it has testing in the name, so I'm just going to get something from that file. So now you're only seeing that insert. So this is another way to kind of filter out. Usually I put in a subfolder. Apparently I didn't update this to put testing in the, you know, that would have made life easier. Anyway. So again, with the filtering, this is where you could say, I'm going to set this audit specification off. I'm going to say, I'm going to filter. This is when I was on Linux. I said, okay, I don't want to see that. The dollar sign, the service account $sign stuff. So, well, I can run that for you so you can actually see what actually happens. So it's going to put the filter in here. So now you can see this. Of course, you could write right in here as well, but you know, either way, you got to disable that before you can change it though, right? Because you can't change it. So if we went in here and started typing something else in here, you know, we couldn't actually say okay unless we'd already disabled it, because that's the rules, right? That's why we do this. So then if I want to disable the audits because I just want to get rid of them, or I don't feel like auditing or whatever reason, you know. So this is what I usually do. I go to those sys tables, see if it exists in the sys tables, then I just alter it. They each have their own little different syntax, depending on the audit, like database server audit, whichever audit specifications. So then you can see now, these are all disabled now, because that's what my scripts just did. Those disabled it, so they're all disabled. And then we can drop it the same way. If it exists, then we can drop it. Again, you can't drop it unless it's disabled. And so we did that. And then they're gone. Okay, so but then now they're gone, right? But you come back here and you see this stuff is still here. The files will stay there. You can keep querying them. You know, they didn't go away. So you just know and see it does this automatic audit session changed, but that's all it tells you, literally. So it's not terribly helpful, but it does tell you, alerts you to the fact. You'll get those if the server reboots too, like, so you have patching monthly or something that will show up in the audit because it's saying it gets that the server state changed as well. That does come in your audit as well. But that's all you get. You don't get to see, oh, what changed? I don't know. It doesn't know, I guess. So, so again, you can set this all up via the scripts, right? So we can do this, you know, here's our audit specification, right? So then it's there and it's enabled, it's ready to go. It's got our filters, it's got all the settings you want. And then you'll see a new file here now. At 659, it's kind of all close together there, but this is the new audit specification. You can tell by this GUID, the EC is the old ones. I don't know, I'm just saying because they're the older files, but you'll see the difference. But when you go to query, like with this query over here, if we make changes in the new audit, now you're seeing all of them. But here is the server audit, right? That gets all the server changes, schema and perms, and all the database schema and perm changes. So that's there. And then it will be here already ready to go. And then I commented this out because I wouldn't do a database audit in this case because I already got all that stuff up here. It didn't get DBCC, but I don't really care about that so much. So then I just don't worry about it. I don't change this. This comes in handy when you're like, I just want to get one database. I don't want to see all this database schema stuff at every database. I just want one database. So that's when I would use it. And then this is here is, like I said before, if you want just that one table, say in one database, I kind of keep that separate. And I'd actually, for really, put it in the in the subfolder so that it's actually separate. Because when I go to pull this one's, I don't want all this, I don't want this other junk. Well, it's server junk. People inserting random stuff. Well, it's probably not random, but you know what I mean. So keep it separate. So anyway, let's just like create something so that you see that stuff happens. So these audits are working. Oh, look at nifty. You see, it catches some of that. It catches sometimes things you do because you already had the audit specification in place that's capturing changes at, so our original audit specification and server audit are going to capture some of these things because we're creating and altering. So those new audit specifications will get caught, but you can't catch the stuff at the beginning because there's nothing there to catch it. So then we see that we created this database, and so it's here. And you see all the old stuff is here too, because I'm saying star from this folder and our old files are still there. Of course, you could delete them, which is usually what I do when I clean stuff up. But and then, yeah, of course, so that's the cleanup at the end of the demo. My demo script's out in GitHub too, from very similar in new stars, and it's in group I too. So okay, so that's the demo. Let's go back to our slides. Does anybody have any questions about the demo, or while I get back to my slides here?
Josephine, can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah, I can hear you.
I think I understand why you want to have that shut down the server. I think you'd want to set up one audit to just audit the audits, so that
Yeah.
if somebody were to break in and
Yeah.
shut down the audit, do something malicious, and then re-enable the audit, you'd never be
Yeah.
able to catch them because
Yeah.
the audit was disabled.
Yeah,
So
it's a
I
good point.
think that's probably why they want to have that disable one.
Yeah, that's a good point. I was never so worried about it, but I agree that that is a good point, that you can set up a separate one to just get the audit actions and only that, and then say shut it down. Or a fail operation, because they wouldn't be able to stop the audit. It would just say, oh, you can't stop it, right? That's probably what I would choose. Say fail it, because if you try to stop an audit and there's another audit watching it, and it would say, nope, you can't do that. It would just fail, so they wouldn't be able to. Yeah, I like that. Thank you. That's a good idea.
I don't know, it just came to me when I was watching your slide about this audited the audit specification.
I know, there's like always something else to think of, because people, that's why I love presenting it, because there's always another idea. I was like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, thank you. That's a really good idea. Does anybody else have questions about the demo? Okay, so I centralize this stuff because I don't want to go picking around or querying through my registered server list to get data. And I think most people probably have more than one production server. And then I found the easiest way is to have it centralized. So it's easy to get a report. I said, what happened last day or the last week? Then I can just get that really quickly. And how I did this is I set up a link server on each of the audited servers. And then I had a SQL agent job that sends data to the central database like every hour I think it's every 4 hours I do it, because I don't have that many perms and schema changes. It's an interval of your choosing, right? So it just depends, like what are you collecting, how much is changing. And then again, like I said, if I'm auditing inserts on a table because the developer wants to know what's going on, or something's going on with a table, I probably wouldn't centralize that, but it depends on your needs. It could be something you'd like. So once it's in the central server, I have an email. I send an email with daily auditing results in HTML format. So that's the SQL agent job, right? So, and I also have a job that cleans it up, and I only keep 30 days, but obviously that's up to you how much you think you need. And you need to have the database mail configured to send that email on the server. And then here's a sample report. So it's just a cross section, how it could look. I just send a partial statement in the email because it gets messy really fast. It blows out the HTML, blows out the whole thing. It kind of gets messy. And you always go to the database because the full statement's in there. So I have the event time and the action. Like I said, sometimes you can't tell, like, why did this happen? Why are we getting this statement? And then that helps kind of figure it out. And then I get the server it came from, the database, the schema, the user, whether it's successful or not. And I used to think this was a fabulous thing, but I discovered that it says it's successful, even if I know somebody does not have like truncate privileges and it says 1 successful. And I'm like, no way, because I know that person does not have perms to do that. So the successful column is sort of hit and miss, but I just thought it was cool. And I put it in there thinking it was really exciting. And well, I'm not sure how it determines successful or not, because I know for a fact things fail and it says it's successful. I guess it's very optimistic. I also send a weekly report to the ticketing system because that's what actually the auditor, we review and we correlate all the tickets. We have this process that everything prod changes, like perm changes. So we do that as well. But this is every day because I want to know sooner than later if there's a red flag, if somebody's changing something I didn't realize they could change. So I do this every day. And so again, you know, just for easy reporting, I go to every single server, and then I send it via agent jobs and link servers. I actually send the weekly one with PowerShell because I wanted to create an HTML file. And so that's a whole nother story, but that I actually send with PowerShell because it's cleaner. And so daily or weekly, what, you know, depending on your reporting needs. So does anybody have any questions about the centralizing?
Yeah, Josephine, one question. Is that centralized portion? Is that out on GitHub as well?
Not yet, no, but it could be. It could be very soon. I need to add it there because I agree it's kind of a useful bit of this, and I didn't demo it, but yeah, I have all the bits and pieces. I just need to clean it so that it's not anything like proprietary, but yeah, I think I can add it in the next week or two, and yeah, because I need to. So thank you for asking that.
And that's under SQL Kitty?
Yes, SQL Kitty, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah. So my blog is sequelkitty.com, and there's links to like my GitHub and stuff and my Twitter and all that out there. So you can always like hit up my blog to see. Yeah.
And Todd has put the GitHub link in the chat as well.
Oh, okay, nice, thanks. Yeah, I have some miscellaneous other stuff out there too. So, but yeah, I'll get the centralized stuff out there soon. I've been meaning to do it, so it's a good reminder. Okay, so we have the cloud. So everybody's the cloud. Everybody at my company is like, we gotta go to the cloud. All the executives want to go to the cloud. It's gonna save us money. And then they're like, what? The bill is higher now. So anyway, I'm actually migrating some SQL servers to managed instance lately. And it's like, oh, those are kind of pricey. I mean, we have to pay for the license on-prem and all the other stuff, but they're like thinking they're gonna save a ton of money. Anyway, I know everybody wants to go to the cloud because it's better. Air quotes. So anyway, I just want to do a high level comparison though, so you can see what you can and can't have up there. If you do have managed instance, or you have AWS RDS, or if you have VMs, of course, out there in Azure, which I highly don't recommend. They just drive me crazy there. That's just a mess. That's a whole nother mess that I won't even go into. But anyway, you can do the SQL Server audit same way, but you have to use cloud storage. So you're not going to be putting the E drive, right? Obviously, because you don't have the drive. But the VM, you could do exactly the same because you have drive. So if you have a VM in Azure, it's just like what I showed you on my local machine. So then you have some other differences here. Like if you had Google Cloud, they have some cloud audit logs via the Google. I haven't even used it, so I can't speak to it in any great detail, but I can tell you that it's definitely not SQL Server audit. And it may be something more like Azure SQL. So Azure SQL does not have SQL Server audit, but it does have server and database audits via the portal. And so they're kind of like it. You can use this. You can use these audits to see the queries run by the users, right? So, You can enable it for free or a cost. It depends on the storage location you choose. So when I first tested, I was using the log analytics storage because you get up to 500 megs a day and up to 7 days of history. So you can just try it out at least. So you don't have to pay for any storage. But you run out of space fast on a prod server that way, right? Azure SQL prod, it's not going to be enough. The thing with it is that there's no option to say, don't do database auditing at the server level. That doesn't exist here. So if you turn it on at the server level, you're just going to get everything everywhere, like all the little databases on there. It's going to get everything. You cannot filter. You cannot say, oh, I just want to see the schema on perm shades. You can't do that. So you just get everything. It's kind of a fire hose. And basically, same thing applies here though. So if you turn on at the database level, you don't want to turn on the server level. So if maybe you only want to audit one database in there, not all, whatever, how many you have on there, then you could do that. So yeah, it gets a little messy in there, but high level, you just push on though. So that's kind of nice. I mean, it's pretty easy. You just say on, and then you can choose your storage location. I usually choose log analytics. There's been I still am working out the kinks here because log analytics doesn't seem to work unless I also save it to Event Hub. But that's a work in progress right now. I haven't had time to set this up in great detail. I've only done a couple of them. Again, like at least with log analytics, and you can do free storage. Like I said, you only get 500 meg, but at least you can try it out without incurring additional costs, I guess. The thing that I thought was confusing is you enable at the server level. There's no way to view anything at the server level. You have to actually go into each database and view at the database level. So what I did is I put multiple databases in the same log analytics storage. So then when I queried it with the custo language, then I could just get everything all in one log analytics. I would go to like 15 different databases, right? So you go into the database and you choose auditing and you click view audit logs. And then you click on the log analytics because that's where I store it, because there's other ways. If you do the Event Hub and the other, I can't remember exactly how it works, but then there's like files on disk. I think you can then query them. So that's a whole nother thing. I'm planning a whole presentation just on Azure SQL auditing in the near future. So that's coming because it's its own creation unto itself. So in this case, I went ahead and said, after you press log analytics, you can see this log area. So I went ahead and actually did something so you could see something happen. I created a table, altered a table. And again, you have this custom language. It's pretty straightforward once you get in there and like actually start using it. But at first you're like, huh, okay, but it's pretty straightforward once you kind of fiddle around with it a little bit. But anyway, like I said, remember you turn on the server level, especially if you want to get all your databases. If you don't, then you wouldn't do that. You just do it at the database level, but you do have to view the audit logs at the database level. Like I said, I slap them all in the same log analytics multiple, and then I can see them all at once together instead of having to like try to query across all these databases. So, but yeah, it's super high level. Basically, everybody has like a different way of doing it. Unless you have VMs in the cloud, it'll be exactly the same as what I showed you. Even like AWS and managed instance, though, they're pretty similar. So it just depends on what you're doing in the cloud. So does anybody have cloud questions? Okay, so the end. Oh, wait, did somebody have a question?
Just curious, maybe
Okay.
you covered this and I missed it, but I assume being that it's cloud, it only holds a certain amount. Is that definable? No?
I mean, yeah, well, I guess it depends on how much like your storage account can hold, but I would think it's pretty unlimited considering that they, the limits of storage accounts, whatever those are, I don't even know. I'm studying AWS lately. I haven't been studying Azure, so I don't know that there is any limit really. If you want to pay to store for all eternity everything, I guess they would let you do that because they want your money. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the sky's the limit. Literally, it's like a cloud. There's like a cloud going up there in the sky saying, please send us all your data. Okay, so anyway, just a quick review of what we went over, that the audit specifications required, because that's where your data is stored, right? And then you have your server and or database audit. You can have both in one audit specification, but you can't have more than one of each of those. So you can create multiple audit specifications for that, and then put another server database audit in there. Of course, you can set them up via the GUI or the scripts, and right, my red bold again is to not audit so much that you overload your server, or you can't pick through it, or, you know, it's just too much for you to deal with. So then I have resources for the stuff that I discussed here. So all kinds of links here that goes over in more detail. And then my contact information. So thank you for having me at your user group. I appreciate it. I actually would like to come to your user group in person, but I may never, because you're so far away. I may never get to DTC again. I mean, eventually in my life, but maybe not anytime soon.
Well, thank you so much. That was very, very interesting. Sorry, does anybody have any questions? I know I have a couple, but
Okay.
does anybody else have any questions?
I did. Josephine, this is Todd.
Hi. Okay.
So two things. One, if you're a fan of DBA tools, they've got this really nifty copy DBA instance audit and copy DBA instance audit
Oh.
specification in PowerShell that you can
Oh,
migrate that out with one line of code versus, you can script things out and put that in source control, but when it's time to do it,
oh,
you
yeah.
can use DBA tools for that.
Oh, yeah, DBA tools. Yeah, I totally love them. I use them for other stuff. I didn't realize they had that. Okay.
Yep. And then second, I kind of heard this as a tip a long time ago. I've never tried it myself. It sounds interesting though. But when it comes time to doing a server instance migration,
Mhm.
I've seen people will run like SP who is active, like every like couple minutes just
Oh,
to
yeah.
capture
Mhm.
activity, and then they persist that to a table.
Yes.
Whereas I've heard people using audit as a way of doing that, but even better because it does extended events behind the scenes. So have you ever
Mhm.
heard of people using SQL audit as preparation prior to a migration?
No, not in particular. We only used it for auditing what people are doing to catch, I mean, so that we know what's happening. We've used it in the case, like I said, with SA, we want to get people off of it, but I could totally see using it in the case of migrating. For sure. I mean, I'd like to get rid of stuff that's not in use. I mean, that's one use case I can see, because I don't want to migrate everything, especially to the cloud. I don't want to migrate everything if we're not even using it. But I could see using it.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah. Mhm, yeah, of course.
So my questions, this may have been covered earlier, but when writing the rights to the audit, are those synchronous or asynchronous with, I'm kind of thinking about the locking profile, right? The transaction locks. Are those
Yeah.
synchronous or asynchronous?
I really haven't the foggiest, quite frankly, because I don't know how it handles really in the background, the inner workings of it. If anybody knows how extended events work, it probably works like that, because it is extended events under the hood. You can't tell, but I'm not really sure how extended events handles that either, because it can go, I've done extended events to audit SA too. And, so it just depends on what you're going for, but yeah, I'm not really sure.
Okay. And have you worked with it in any kind of availability groups scenario, clustering and such?
Yeah, I do. I have auditing on one availability group. But it doesn't audit the failovers, because it like happens as part of the patching, and auto fails over, right, as part of the failover cluster underneath. So it never captures any of that, but I'm guessing it would capture if you manually failed it over. I'm guessing it would capture if somebody manually failed over the AG, but I pretty much have auditing on each of the nodes.
Okay, so the audit Okay, so the auditing then is still per node. It's not, you can't like offload it to a follower or something like that.
No, yeah, you can't offload it.
Okay,
Yeah, no, yeah, there's no like secondary, and our secondaries aren't read-only either, so that would kind of, I don't think, yeah, I think even if you had readable secondaries, I don't think you could offload, because people could still be writing to the primary or whatever, and then you're doing different stuff on the secondary, so no, you can't offload it.
those are all my questions. Does anybody else have any? All right. Oh, I see Cliff. Cliff, did you have
Okay.
a question? Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.
Okay.